Charlotte's eyebrows raised. You checked the stove to see if it's off, and the water to make sure it wasn't turned on every time you left the house? He nodded with a rueful twist of his mouth. My worry was the windows and the barn. I don't know why I thought I needed to check the barn, since the horse was with me. We only had one horse at the time, but I had to make sure the barn was locked up. His words made her smile. Well, he hoped it was his words that brought that curve to her lips. He wanted it to be, and what he said was the truth. When his wife had passed away suddenly, he had felt lost and adrift, much like Charlotte felt now. Maybe you would feel better if you had Goldie back here, he continued. Goldie was the golden retriever that Charlotte had gotten from Paul's son, Obie. Obie had been raising golden retriever puppies for many years now, and he raised some of the finest dogs in Wells Landing. Charlotte sighed and stirred a spoonful of sugar into her coffee. She's so rambunctious. Paul suppressed a chuckle. She'll get better as she gets older. Charlotte shook her head. She's almost a year old, and she doesn't mind worth anything. Training a dog takes patience, he confirmed. And that's why I sent her over to the Lamberts. I figured Buddy could do a better job with her than I ever could. Paul could only nod. When it came to animals, Buddy Miller had the patience of a saint. And when I saw how she and PJ played together, Charlotte continued, well, I'd feel bad taking her away. I understand, Paul said. But he didn't really. It seemed as if Charlotte was making excuses for not having the dog underfoot. He knew as well as any man that dogs came with all sorts of temperaments and personalities, and it just seemed that Goldie was a little more wound up than most. Mix that with the fact that he was pretty sure Charlotte had only gotten the dog because she was missing Jenna, and not because she truly wanted one. Well, it made for a bad combination. Not that he thought Charlotte was a bad person. She was struggling, that was all, and trying to do her best to make up for the losses in her life. He couldn't find fault with her for that. Maybe you should do what Amos did, Paul suggested. Amos Fisher had decided that he wanted a dog, so he had gone out and adopted one from the animal shelter. He had gotten an older dog. Amos had said he didn't want one that barked at every little sound and ran around crazy like puppies were prone to do. At the sound of Amos's name, Charlotte pressed her lips together. It wasn't that she didn't like Amos. Everyone liked Amos. But Paul knew that Amos was taking Nadine away from Charlotte. Just one more loss in her life that she had to face. Amos had recently traveled back to Missouri to spend some time with his people there. He had been gone when Charlotte and her family had moved to Wells Landing. But when he'd come back, he had fallen instantly in love with Nadine, and now the two were a steady couple. Everyone was talking about when they might get married, though they had made no intention known. It was just a matter of time. Everyone in Wells Landing knew it. And when Nadine got married, Charlotte would be truly alone. Jenna was married to Buddy and living with the Lamberts. Once Nadine was married to Amos, they would live in his trailer on the piece of land where he was starting to build a big, beautiful house for her. And Charlotte would be left alone to rattle around the house that he was certain she thought she would stay in with her family forever. Change is hard, Paul said. Charlotte flipped her prayer-covering strings over her shoulder. Only recently had she been going around with them untied. Paul had noticed, but he wasn't sure if anyone else had. Certainly when it came to small details like that, most Amish were very attentive. He just couldn't figure out the nature of her rebellion, if he could even call it that. He wasn't sure anyone cared whether her strings were tied or not. And he certainly couldn't figure out what rebelling would do to stop this slow trickle of loss in her life. Don't I know it? Then, as if she realized who she was talking to, she let out a quick breath and reached across the table toward him. Her hand touched his so briefly. Then, as if remembering her place, she pulled away. Not quick enough that the softness